Okay, this is a really important video because it's on those data questions I know you find really hard. Now there's going to be maybe 2 in your exam, but what I don't want people to do is get 23 potential right and then just give up on these 2, because that'd be such a waste of marks because they are so easy once you know the game. Right, so make sure you watch this video and hopefully you'll feel better. Right, remember there's going to be a table. It's going to tell you some information. This time it only talks about unemployment rate and inflation rate. Okay, does it say anything about the employment rate? No, it doesn't. So the first answer isn't right because it's got nothing to do with employment. Lots of people will get this wrong. What they'll do is they'll look at this and they'll say unemployment's gone down, so that must mean employment's gone up. Well, that's not true, because people have gone from being unemployed to being economically, let's go write it down, economically inactive. This basically means that they're not willing or able to get a job, so that means they're not actually economically active at all. So it could be someone who maybe has got a knee injury so they can't work anymore. So just because they're not unemployed anymore doesn't mean they're suddenly employed. So we can't tell the first one. It might be true, but we can't tell. Right, B, prices fell between 2011 and 2012. Now, some people, actually to be honest, some people might have thought this was right, because they're thinking, right, it was 4.5%, now it's 4.2%. So that's lower, so that must mean prices fell. But actually, prices rose just at a slower rate, because they went from 4.5% going up to going up by 4.2%. So they'll keep on going up, but at a slower rate. So that's wrong, B. They're only falling if you see a minus. If it said minus 4.2, then they're falling. Right, there was an inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment. Inverse just means when one's going up, the other one's going down. Does this really work for this one? No, because this one, look, this one's going down, and this one's going down as well. So it's not inverse at all. So that's stupid. So the answer is D. The value of money fell through the period. And that's just because when there's inflation, the value of money falls. And as you can see, in every single year, there is an increase in the rate. There's an increase in the amount of inflation. There's always inflation in every single year. Just it goes in the last year at a slower rate. Okay, so the answer is D. But you could work that one out by just working out the other ones are wrong. On to the next one. Okay, here's the next one. This time they're going for a index number 1, and they love an index 1 every so often. So they call 2010 100. All an index does is they say there was a base year, and they call that 100 always. Now, was GDP 100? No, it wasn't. It was some stupid number. But the problem is, it'd be really hard to compare it going up and down if you had that number. So instead, they call it 100, and then it's very clear to people how much it's gone up by and how much it's gone down by. Okay, so between 2008 and 2012, there must have been an increase in. Right, this is GDP. Let's see which ones could be right and which ones definitely can't be right. Okay, if GDP's gone up, there's a reasonable chance there might be an increase in aggregate demand. So we can say that's a possibility, and we'll leave it there. Right, if GDP goes up, does that mean there must have been an increase in the size of the labour force? I don't really know how you'd be able to tell that. Just because there's an increase in GDP doesn't mean it's come from there being a bigger increase in labour force. It could have been because of an improvement in quality of labour. So I think that doesn't make any sense. Okay, C. When GDP goes up, there must have been an increase in the rate of inflation. Is there any way you could tell that from that? Just because GDP's gone up, there must be inflation. There's absolutely no way you could tell that. D. The government's budget deficit. Again, that could be a reason why there was an increase in the in GDP, but it's not. They're saying here there must. Now, it could have been because the government had spent more money, so therefore the GDP went up. It could have also been because consumers spent more money. So the only one way it must have happened is, if GDP's gone up, there must have been an increase in AD. So the only option is A. All the other ones possibly, but the key word there is must. Okay, these questions, all they want to know about is they want to know if you understand certain words. So there are words in here, they're saying there is GDP, and we know what GDP is, and it's an index again, so 2005 was the 100, and they've got a price index as well. So what they want you to know is, do you know the difference between real and nominal? Real means inflation has been taken into account. Nominal means inflation hasn't been taken into account. That's all it is, okay? Right, so let's go through it. Now, you're going to have to get your calculators out here, and I know you're not going to want to, but this is a key moment. Are you ready for it? What people make a mistake is, how much has GDP gone up by? GDP has gone up by 50, do you agree? Right? And price index has gone up by 30. So they just think that must mean real GDP has gone up by 20. That's what they think. But you've got to actually do the calculation, and you've got to try and do how much it's gone up by. And the only way to do that is to do percentage change. So I want to see how much GDP has gone up by. So what I do is I do the difference between these two numbers. Difference is 50. And I put that over the original number, which is 80. And I times by 100. Okay, so GDP has gone up by 62.5%. We happy with that? Right, I'm going to do the same for the price index. This one has gone up by 30, but the original was 80 as well. So if I times that by 100, that one is 37.5. So to do that, all I did was 30 over the original number 80 times by 100. So far what we've got is we've got the GDP. Whoops. GDP's gone up by, how much has it gone up by? 62.5%. And inflation has gone up by 37% or 37.5%. Okay. So, did real GDP rise by 50%? Now, real GDP would be the 62.5 take away 37.5, and that's 25. So did real GDP rose by 50%? No, it only rose by 25%. So that's wrong. Right, did nominal GDP rose by 50%? No, it rose by 62.5%. So that's wrong. Did real GDP rose by less than 50%? That's definitely right, because it was 25%, so it was less than. So that's the right answer. And then D, nominal GDP rose by less than 50%. That's wrong, because it rose by more than 50%. So with this question, what you need to be able to do is find the percentage change in numbers. To do that, remember, all you've got to do is find the difference between the two numbers, whatever it is. Can't spell difference, but you can't have everything. So the difference between those two numbers is 50. So I'm talking about these numbers here. Then I put it over the original, and I times by 100, and that will get you percentage change. You can't get that right answer easily unless you do those calculations. So just make sure you do. Okay, I like these ones. These were the ones where they try and work out what's going on in your current account. Okay, so you need to know a little bit about the current account to do this. Okay, current account is exports minus imports. We know this. So, they've got all this other stuff in here as well. And lots of people get confused with this. Now, just so you know, net investment income and net transfers are part of the current account. All these things are part of the current account. Okay, but what are going to be? I'll get rid of that. I don't know what I've drawn there. What are going to be the pluses and what are going to be the minuses? Because basically you just got to add and plus all these numbers. So an export of a good would be good for our current account, so we'll put a plus there. An export of a service would be good again. Import of goods is obviously bad for our current account, and import of services is bad as well. Now net investment income and net transfers, you look, they're both plus, so they're both things you add on. So what I do here is I've added 500, it's as easy as this, plus 400, plus the 50 at the bottom, plus 100, and because I'm not cocky, because I don't want to be the big man, I'm going to actually add them up properly. Might get a calculator out, and the answer is 1050. But then we've got to take away these two, 800 and 300. So what's that add up to? So it's 1050 take away 1100, and that equals minus 50 billion. So the answer is D. There's no easier way of saying that. I mean, to be honest, I think that's an easy one, I hope. Right, here's another one of those ones where we've got to try and find the percentage change, and that's the way to do it. And some of you are going to get this wrong if you try to do it without me telling you right now. So this is really important. Right, okay, so we're talking about national income. We've got GDP, which is growth, and we've got CPI, which is to do with inflation. Now again, they've done one of those price index things, so they've been set at 100, probably back in, I don't know when they did it. But anyway, okay, so according to the figures between 2009 and 2010, the country's real national income. So to find real national income, it'd have to be GDP with inflation taken into account. Now, you could try and get this right straight away, and you'll be completely wrong. So you've got to actually do the calculations. Right, this is the mistake people make. They think, well, GDP has gone from 100 to 130. So it's gone up by 30, right? And then they think, well, CPI has also gone up by 30 because it's gone from 120 to 150. So they think, oh, they've both gone up by 30. So that means in real terms they've stayed the same, right? But they'd be wrong. That's not the right answer because they haven't done that calculation you have to do, which is a percentage change calculation. So for GDP, you would do 30 over 100 times by 100, which we know is 30. But for the other one, it's 30 over the original number, which is 120, the CPI, times by 100. And that is, just get my calculator out, 25%. So actually, what's happened? GDP's gone up by 30%, so GDP gone up by 30, whereas CPI has only gone up by 25%. So in real terms, GDP's actually gone up by 5%. So that's wrong, you can determine it. It hasn't decreased, it's increased, so the answer's A. And it's as simple as that. The big mistake you'll do is you won't find that, and I wanted to say it again, you've got to be able to find the percentage change. And to find percentage change, it is difference over the original times by 100. And that's really, really important. Right, on to the next one. So this one is a graph now. It's the same idea, they're just done it in a graph. Right, so this one, to be honest, at the minute, all this graph shows is, well, don't worry, all it shows is GDP changes. Right, it shows annual percentage change in GDP. But to make it real, they've also said there's a 2% thing here. So that's 2% inflation. So for an example year, in 03, nominal GDP would be about 2.2%, whereas real GDP would only be 0.2%, if that makes sense. Anyway, so part A says real GDP decreased between 2007 and 2008. Can we see that? So 2007 and 2008, that's definitely not true because GDP went up but at a slower rate. And in real terms, so for example, let's go for an arrow just to make sure why I'm right. In 2007, it was going up by 3.2%. In 2008, it was going up by 2.4%. Even if you take into account inflation at 2%, it would still be going up. So either way, that's wrong. Now, next one. Real national output increased each year from 2002. Is that true? So every single year from this point onwards, now this point it doesn't, but from 2002, from this point onwards, it does. It's all above that 2% margin. So the answer is B. Right, just to make sure, like, you might be thinking I'm not happy with that one being right, because it's saying each year from 2002, and 2002 was actually a minus, but it's from, so it's after 2002. Anyway, C, money GDP fell between 2000 and 2002. I don't even know what they mean by money GDP, so get rid of that. They're just trying to scare you. And then D, real GDP was the highest in 2004. That's absolute rubbish. All that is the percentage change. So the biggest rise in GDP was in 2004. But if you think 2005, it was actually 3% higher than it was in 2004. So the answer's wrong. Right, moving on. Question number 15. This one is fairly easy, I think. Right, so it says an economy has nominal GDP growth of 8%. So that's 8% if you don't take into account inflation, so that's 8% there. But inflation's been taken into account here of 5.5%. So you could say in real terms, GDP's only gone up by 2.5%, if that makes sense. And then there's a population growth of 2.5%. So actually, if you take into account that as well, GDP hasn't changed at all, it's 0. So the approximate change in real GDP, so that's taking into account inflation, and per capita, which taking into account the population, is 0. It hasn't changed at all. And it's as simple as that. Well, I hope they made sense. They are the kind of key things you need to know for the exams. Right, the key moments, I'm just going to put the key things you need to know are, 1, you need to find whenever you've got an index number, you've always got to find the percentage change. And the percentage change is always difference over the original times by 100. And it's really important you do that. So I'll give you an example of it here. Right? You could have, both have been done index numbers. So you could have one which started at 120, or so I'll go 2009 and 2010. That was 120 and it went up to 150. Whereas another one was 90 and it goes up to 120. So that could be the GDP and that could be the CPI. Right. Lots of people will say, look, GDP's gone up by 30 and CPI's gone up by 30, so therefore real GDP has stayed the same, equals 0. But that's not true. To actually do this properly, you have to find percentage change. Because with the first one, for GDP, it's gone up by 30, but the original was 120. So if I times that by 100, where am I going? Don't go away, let's get my calculator out. Okay, so that's 25% increase. With the next one, what's happened? It's gone up by 30, but the original was 90. So you know this has been wrong. It's 30 divided by 90 equals, this is one gone up by 33%. So actually, here, GDP's only gone up by 25%, whereas whereas inflation's gone up by 33%. So in real terms, GDP has gone down. But lots of people will just say it stayed the same because they haven't actually bothered doing percentage change. So that's the first thing you've got to remember to do. The second thing you've got to remember to do is remember what the difference is between nominal and real. Nominal means inflation has not been taken into account. Real means inflation has been taken into account.